Okay, so this would be a time to really notice your own natal chart. And I'm gonna try and go through all the signs fairly quickly to give an orientation a little bit to the houses. And I pulled up this chart as we began our workshop. So it has a Scorpio rising chart. And so if you are a Scorpio rising person, then this chart layout corresponds with your chart. And what I want you to notice here is the placement of the air signs. And so if you are a Scorpio rising person, or if you are a Pisces rising person, or a Cancer rising person, I'll show Cancer in a moment, you will have the air signs in the 4th, the 8th, and the 12th houses, okay? So all water sign risings are working with the air triplicity in the same houses. And those houses are 4, 8, and 12. Okay, so the 4th house, the 8th house, and the 12th house are places in the chart that all convey entanglement and emotion and psychology. The 4th house has to do with your lineage and the family or the homes and families that birthed you, that created you, the place that you come from, and also with your innermost and most private or sense of home self, your internal self now, okay? Home and family themes in the 4th house. In the 8th house, we have the more underneath or deeper aspects of relationships, particularly relationships, or I should say, we have the subtext or the psychological underneath of our one-on-one relationships. So with our one-on-one relationships with other people, we have feelings about those people. We have attachments. We might have things that are secret or private, or either within those relationships or within ourselves in relationship to those people. The 8th house is commonly associated with sex, death, money, and power. And these are some of the themes that definitely come up with the 8th house, but I'd really like all of us to think about the 8th house as a place of intimacy and vulnerability, and also a place where trust becomes really an important issue. The 8th house is also a place of deep transformation and transformational growth within relationships. So it's a place very much related with psychology and with inheritances and debts. And that can include possessions and money, but also energies that we get from other people, our emotional, psychological entanglements. The 12th house is a place of embeddedness within the everything. And so all of us are totally affected by culture and society and a lot of stuff that we definitely don't understand because it's too big to see. And so in the 12th house, we come into a space of collective and what is bigger than what can be known. This is also the place of the spiritual or the subtle or the liminal energies. So 4, 8, and 12 for the water signs are getting stimulated by the air triplicity. Okay, so that's interesting, right? The air element as an element of thoughts and ideas and language comes into places in the water charts that are very deep, that are very personal, that are embedded and psychological and relational. Okay, if you happen to be a fire sign rising, Leo, Sagittarius, or Aries, then your air signs are going to come in the social houses. So 3, 7, and 11. So the social houses, 3, 7, and 11, have a lot to do with how we conceptually meet other people. In the third house, we have conversations, we come into the mind, we formulate ideas, and we learn. This is a place that has a lot to do with education, the sharing of information. In the seventh house, we partner, and we also come into one-on-one relationship with others. When we are feeling this front surface of our body, this is the seventh house, right? The face, the presentation, how we move forward into relationship and how relationship comes to meet us. The seventh house has a lot to do with the contracts that we make in our relationships. The 11th house is associated with our friends and groups and networks and relationships that are beyond the one or the few and extend into the many. And in that way, we can understand the many also to involve all kinds of potentials. And so the 11th house is also a place of potentials. So if you're a fire sign rising, if you're Aries, Leo, or Sag rising, then you have the air signs in your social houses, in the places where you come into conversation, where you come into meeting with others. Okay, so there's a question in the chat about house systems. And so what I'm looking at here is a whole sign chart, and that puts the bulk of an entire sign in a house. And if you are someone who's working in a more intermediate level with astrology, you might be playing around with different house systems. And so if you use a Placidus house system, you might have these signs influencing more than one house. Think about it however you want to think about it. You can think about what's on the cusp. You can think about which houses are being affected. But I think that there's actually something pretty useful right now in taking a whole sign approach and thinking about the air triplicity in its kind of triangle shape as it moves the wheel and how it influences particular elements. Okay, if you're an Earth rising sign, okay, Capricorn, Taurus, or Virgo, then your air triplicities are in the 2nd, 6th, and 10th houses. And the 2nd, 6th, and 10th houses have everything to do with manifestation, with creating and surviving here on Earth. The 2nd house has to do with your resources, the resources that you have in your body inherently. Your body is a resource. The resources that your body needs to sustain and survive. You need to eat. You need a home. What else do you need? So the 2nd house has to do with your needs and your resources. The 6th house has a lot to do with your labor, with your jobs, your sense of service, how you apply yourself through labor, through repetition, through iteration, and also how you work with failure. Yes, always love that theme. The 6th house has a lot to do also with functionality, and the function of your body, including your health and your well-being, is a big theme for the 6th house. How you care for your environment and attend to your responsibilities is a 6th house theme. In the 10th house, we have ideas of lineage and creation in the world, what you are responsible for making and what you can become. The 10th house is the place of career and public image, as well as, you know, who you are in the world, if we think about status or things like that. Okay, so if you're an Earth sign rising, then your air triplicities, your air triplicity is in the 2nd, 6th, and 10th houses. Okay, and then finally the air signs. Okay, so if you're an air sign rising, if you're Aquarius rising, Gemini rising, or Libra rising, then the air signs all exist in the houses of self. So we've got the 1st house, which is the house of your embodied identity, your body and your sense of self. You exist. That's the 1st house. Your 5th house is the house of your self-actualization. What do you get to do in this life to express yourself? How do you realize who you are? How do you become who you are? How do you express yourself authentically? The 5th house is also associated with pleasure and fun, because I think most of us are having the most fun when we are being ourselves really authentically and courageously. And finally, the 9th house has a lot to do with our beliefs and our guiding principles. I think of this as the place where we make our own meanings. And when I say make the meaning that's meaningful for you, right? Follow your own path. Like, this is what I'm saying. So the ninth house is the house of vision. It's the house of personal path. And it's what you rise towards and what you elevate towards and what you are guided by. I want to take a moment and invite us to write for a couple of minutes on reflections of where the air signs are for you, and reflect on any keywords that came up for you. So again, just to remind us all, there's nothing here to get. Okay, whatever information you take away from this space is the information that was the right information to receive. You can keep working with this. Astrology is a lot, like there's a lot of parts. So my hope is that you have a idea of where the air triplicity is in your chart. And if you're working with a whole sign chart, then this will include 3 houses. If you're working with Placidus, it might include more than 3. So you have an idea of where the air triplicity is in your chart. The air signs are all working together. And as I went over before, over the course of Libra season, the Sun, Venus, and Mercury are all going to be forming trines with Saturn and Vesta and Mars. Okay, so the grand air trine, all 3 air signs are going to get activated. So when we have a grand trine in a chart, what we have is a confluence of opportunity. And all of these energies now that all have to do with idea and consciousness and information shapes consciousness, and then consciousness shapes form. All of these signs are getting stimulated. So we have a lot of activation in our lives and opportunities as well to shift consciousness inside of ourselves and within our relationships. And that shift in consciousness will result in a shift in form. And what forms are shifting, you might ponder through the significance of these placements in your chart. Now, this is work for you to take into the next several weeks, right? Not to figure out in this moment exactly. But I want to give you one more little piece of information, and then we'll call it good for the day. So this last piece of information has to do with the particular kinds of energies that each air sign is bringing. So what I'm going to name now are called the modalities. So we're working within the air element, and all 3 signs are air. Yeah, ideas, thoughts, conversations, intelligences. But we have what are called cardinal, fixed, and mutable air. So cardinal as an energy begins something. Fixed as an energy brings it into being, it consolidates power. And immutable changes it. Cardinal air is Libra. I'm going to read you some quotes. So the truth of relationship, right? This cardinal initiatory, it brings it into being. In the Tao Te Ching, there is an amazing orientation towards this basic beingness and relationship. Under heaven, all can see beauty as beauty only because there's ugliness. All can know good as good only because there is evil. Therefore, having and not having arise together. Difficult and easy complement each other. Long and short contrast each other. High and low rest upon each other. Voice and sound harmonize each other. Front and back follow one another. Therefore, the sage goes about doing nothing, teaching, no talking. 10,000 things rise and fall without cease. Greeting, yet not possessing. Working, yet not taking credit. Work is done, then forgotten. Therefore, it lasts forever. So Libra as a cardinal air energy teaches us that we are always in relationship. In this organization and experience of self, there is always contrast and reflection, but anything that we might experience and anything that emerges always is emerging within relationship. So where you find Libra in your chart, question, what is being catalyzed, what is being initiated or brought into being in the consciousness that's here? In the relational consciousness that is here. And in the work that we did in the beginning of our time together, this tuning in with the deeper essence of what form is, how might we awaken here? In the relationships that we find in Libra's placement, what are the invitations? What is asking to be known? So then Aquarius is fixed air. And fixed energy, fixed as a modality, brings something into form, but it holds the form. It consolidates power. Libra as a cardinal energy suggests that we're always in relationship. Aquarius as a fixed form, fixed energy, says that our becoming is the relationship. Aquarius in our bodies rules the nervous system, and our nervous systems are shaped and wired in relationship. Yeah, so as beings, we develop our attention, our sense organs, our speech pathways, our behavioral mannerisms. All of that is developed in relationship. Everything that we think that we know about ourselves comes from relationship. Every thought that any of us has had comes from somewhere else. In our nervous systems, we have a way of being, right, that has been consolidated, that has come into form. And then form gets fixed. We have patterns, and once we have patterns, they're hard to change. Saturn is the ruler of Aquarius, right? When we want to change our habits, we have to show up for it every single day. Change happens slowly, over time, through iteration, repetition. Each of us, in our own beings and in the ways that we are organized in our nervous systems, are relational. And when we come into contact with one another, we build cultural bodies. We build relationships that are bigger. Yeah. And so as I'm relating with you right now, you might be shifting in your own sense of being. Something might be getting rubbed or stirred or clarified or elevated or inspired. And that's going to shift the way then that you're in relationship with someone else later on today. And we are all in a body together. In our bodies and their particular social locations, we hold larger cultural bodies. For myself as a white-bodied individual, I want to invite myself to feel into the cultural body of whiteness. And I want to ask myself, how do I participate within this cultural body to start to shift some of the the narratives and the stories that this body has been a part of on this earth or on this planet. As a queer-bodied individual, I feel my body resonating with my queer kin. And as a queer-bodied individual, I might think about the ways that I express in my embodiment of queerness in my relationships and what that means for the world around me. So thinking about your body and your nervous system, you are also thinking about your opportunities and your responsibilities, right? Because you got shaped. You didn't ask for the conditions that you were born into. You didn't ask for your nervous system to be entrained in the ways that it was. You didn't ask for your traumas. And all of them shaped you and have shaped your nervous system. And that is an inheritance. But then there's you. There's your consciousness. There's your essence. There's how you show up for your life day in and day out. And it's what you do. And it's how you bring yourself that then allows you to shape change. So I want to read you another quote. This is from James Baldwin, Notes of a Native Son. My inheritance was particular, specifically limited and limiting. My birthright was vast, connecting me to all that lives and to everyone forever. But one cannot claim the birthright without accepting the inheritance. I had to claim my birthright. I am what time, circumstance, history have made of me, certainly. But I am also much more than that. So are we all. So as you think about Aquarius in your chart, think about inheritance and birthright. How have you been shaped? Your nervous system shaped in your relationships. And how has this shape then manifested in the world of relationships that you are a part of? And what are you bringing into these shapes? What consciousness do you want to infuse into the space that you are a part of? And then we get to Gemini. And Gemini is mutable. And the mutable modality changes. Gemini as an energy brings us into curiosity and conversation and comparison. It's a giving and receiving of information. It's a looking around and seeing what else is here. It's an asking deeper. It's a listening function. So when we tune in with Gemini, we tune into the spaces of interrelational potential, the possibility of change that comes in any moment when we bring our attention. At the beginning of our time together, I asked you to pay attention to your breath, and then to notice how, with attention, your breath began to change. And when you tuned in with a form and asked for introduction or offered an introduction, perhaps that relationship changed and more information was available. So where we're working with Gemini, we're working with the potential for change. And these potentials happen in fractals, and they happen in small pieces. In our bodies, Gemini rules the air in the lungs. It rules the arms and the hands and the wingspan. It rules the neurons and the synapses between neurons, the ways that our sense organs reach to information and make sense of things, our meaning making. Read you one more quote, and this is from Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen from her book, Sensing, Feeling, and Action. There's something in nature that forms patterns. we as part of nature also form patterns. The mind is like the wind and the body is like the sand. If you want to know how the wind is blowing, you can look at the sand. Our body moves as our mind moves. The qualities of any movement are a manifestation of how mind is expressing through the body at that moment. So Gemini is a sign that is very associated with mind and the quality of mind. And it's very associated with attention and the qualities of attention. All right. So as you regard your chart and look at the air triplicities, ponder relationships on all levels: relationship to self, relationship to one-on-one, relationship to specific others, partners, collaborators, friends, relationships to near and far enemies, if you have them, relationships to groups, relationships to organizations, relationships to cultural bodies. And I mean that in a more esoteric sense, not in an institutional sense. Include relationship with the more than human and non-human realms. Consider the meaning of the house placements and what is being asked for. In Libra's house placement, over the next several weeks, you're working with the energy of Libra season, right? And these ongoing activations. What do relationships want to teach you right now? And how can you awaken within them? What is being called for? What's being asked for in terms of awakening inside of relationships? In Aquarius house placement in your chart, consider Vesta's station direct tomorrow, and devotion and tending. And remember that this tending is daily. It's moment to moment, it's hour to hour. And Vesta's association is to both sovereignty and devotion. If you were to attend to life energy as you know it, what would that attending look like, feel like? How would you enact and embody it? And then consider Saturn's movement. And between now and next March, what wants to be restructured and fortified? And does anything need to be deconstructed in order for your devotional attendance to be supported? For your attendance to bring into form in the ways that you envision these forms could be. What responsibilities are here for you? And then finally, in Gemini's placement, Mars is here. And we have a direction of action and intent and will moving through the mind, moving through attention, moving through thoughts and ideas and conversations. And so there's a significant prompt here about the potential for attention and the ways that we are going to make meaning. And remember that Mars can be a weapon, and weapons can be healing, and they can also be destructive. So there can be a sword of truthful discernment, right, to cut through the bullshit. And there can also be weapons of mass destruction. There can be unskillful use of force. And so as Mars retrogrades and moves through Gemini, what are you going to pay attention to? How are you going to organize around your actions and reactions? What is emerging in your mind and in your relationships as they present through conversations, through provocation, through information and curiosity? What you pay attention to grows. There may be ways that you're paying attention or locations for your attention that you do not wish to support further growth in. That retrograde might be a time for you to redirect your energy. There may be ways of being in conversation or in thinking in your mental state, in your attentive awareness, that are harmful to yourself or to others, that come across with unintended force. And this retrograde may be a time to examine those habits and tendencies, and potentially to seek repair through deeper conversation. Gemini is also a sign of multiples. And so there could be some significant options. And Mars, as it moves through Gemini, might want to go here and want to go there. And remember that you have choices. What will your choices be? So I'd like to take 5 minutes. And in this time, I want to invite prophesying and oracling to begin. This won't be a complete process. I hope that it will continue to emerge over the next several weeks. So my invitation for you is to invite all the information that's present into your body. Feel your relationship with Earth, with your center. And then imagine all the contexts that you have been associating to as I've been talking. There are specific relationships you've thought of, particular projects or jobs or ideas. There are ways of being, aspects of your own health or wellness. There are options. And as you feel your own body, and as you feel your center, imagine and sense out into everything that's swirling. Now I want to invite a direct channel here, your own guidance and intuition into words. And if you choose, you can write them. And if you want a prompt to begin with, then the prompt is, the story I will tell for the next 6 months begins with.